Good morning. Myself, Miss VIDHYABHAVAN from Srimati LPSAVANI VIDHYABHAVAN, Adajal. Hello students. Hope you all are fine and taking good care of yourself and your family. This video is made for grade 8 student for subject English. Here we are learning about the beautiful story, The Best Christmas Present in the World by Sir Michael Morpeth. There are three main characters in the story. Jim McPherson, he was a captain of his regiment during the World War I in 1914. The war was fought between Germany and Britain. He was a young and ambitious man with etiquettes toward his job. He had a loving wife, Connie McPherson. Although his demise took place and he never returned from the war and didn't write any more letter to Connie. The next character is Connie McPherson, wife of Jim McPherson. She is a mentally stressed wife suffering from the pain of separation. She is living in the false hope between her husband is not coming back from war. She waits for his return. She suffered from burn when a fire broke in her house causing severe injuries. Hans Wolf, he was the captain of German troop. He was from Düsseldorf. Before joining army, he played cello in an orchestra. He loved football. He believed that sports were a good way to resolve conflicts. Before we start part 2, let's have a quick recap. The narrator got an antique desk from the junk shop. While repairing, he saw a secret drawer and found a letter. He read the letter. It was written by Jim McPherson, British soldier, to his wife Connie McPherson. Jim McPherson was deployed to fight against German army. In his letter, Jim has described an evening at the war front. At the war front, instead of fighting, both British as well as German armies celebrated Christmas Eve together merrily. They were making peace at war. Now let's start with the part 2. This is a textual passage. In this passage, the letter which Jim had written for his wife Connie is given. Students, read this textual passage carefully as it is the main part of the story. Now let's start with the explanation. Dearest Connie, I write to you in a much happier frame of mind because something wonderful has just happened that I must tell you about at once. Hans Wolf, he was the captain of German troop. He was from Düsseldorf. Before joining army, he played cello in an orchestra. He loved football. He believed that sports were a good way to resolve conflict. Before we start part 2, let's have a quick recap. The narrator bought an antique desk from the junk shop. While repairing, he saw secret drawers and found a letter. He read the letter. It was written by Jim McPherson, British soldier, to his wife Connie McPherson. Jim McPherson was deployed to fight against German army. In his letter, Jim has described an evening at the war front. At the war front, instead of fighting, both British as well as German army celebrated Christmas Eve together merrily. They were making peace at war. Now let's start with part 2. This is a textual passage. In this passage, the letter which Jim had written for his wife Connie is given. Students, read the textual passage carefully as it is the main part of the story. Now let's start with the explanation. Dearest Connie, I write to you in a much happier frame of mind because something wonderful had just happened that I must tell you about once. Her husband was happily narrating an incident happened. We were all standing in our trenches yesterday morning, Christmas morning. It was crisp and quiet all about, as beautiful morning as I have ever seen, and cold and frosty as a Christmas morning should be. It was Christmas morning and they were standing in their trenches. Here trenches means log deep channel dug at the side of the road, at the side of both the parts where the soldiers were there. He observed a white flag waving from the side of German soldiers. I should like to be able to tell you that we began it, but the truth I am ashamed to say is that Fritz began it, and he was telling Connie that he thought that he has started first, but not. It was from the side of the German troop. Then they were calling out to us from across no man land. Happy Christmas, Tommy. A no man land is a land between both the army troops. And they started wishing Happy Christmas, Tommy. Tommy is a common English name used here to refer to British soldiers. When we had got over the surprise, some of them shouted back, "When same to you, Fritz, same to you." When they wished us, our soldiers also repeated same thing, that same to you, Fritz. Fritz here is a common name given to German soldiers. I thought that it would be that, but then suddenly some of them were up there in his grey coat and waving white flag. The MacPherson thought that this was the end after wishing each other, but no, it was not like that. Some of their soldiers started coming up on the ground and started wishing each other. But then suddenly one of them was up there in his grey greatcoat and waving a white flag. "Don't shoot, lads." The lads are the name of the boys. Someone shouted, and no one did. Then there was another Fritz up on the parapet, and another. "Keep your head down," I told the man. "It's a trick." But wasn't. But no one was not like that. That one of the German soldier was coming with grey coat, waving the white flag to our side, and shouted loudly that "Don't shoot, boys." And then one by one started coming. I was not understanding what was happening. I told to my soldiers that keep your heads down. It may be their trick to attack us, but no, it was not like that. One of the Germans was waving a bottle above his head. "It is a Christmas day, Tommy. We have schnapps, we have sausages." Schnapps, a German drink made from grain, and sausage are the finely chopped meat. By this time there were a dozen of them walking toward us across no man's land, and not a rifle between them. Little Private Morris was the first up. "Come on, boys, what are we waiting for?" And then there was no stopping them. I was the officer. I should have stopped them there and then, I suppose, but the truth is that it never even occurred to me I should. "We all will meet and enjoy together this eve," and they all started walking towards the side of the British soldiers. The German soldiers who came first was Hans Wolf. He shouted, "Come on, boys, what are we waiting for?" And then everyone rushed there. Jim was the officer, but he also didn't stop them. All of them came together, the grey and the khaki coats in the middle, and this was the time between the war we were making peace. You cannot imagine, dearest pony, my feeling as looked into my eyes of the Fritz officer, who approached me, hand outstretched. "Hans Wolf," he said, gripping my hand warmly and holding it. "I am from Dusseldorf. I play the cello in an orchestra. Happy Christmas." Captain Jim McPherson, I replied, and a happy Christmas to you too. I am a school teacher from Dorset in the west of England. Ah, Dorset, he smiled. I know this place. I know it very well. We shared my rum ration and his excellent sausage. And we talked, funny how we talked. He spoke almost perfect English, but it turned out that he had never set foot in Dorset, never even been to England. He had learned all he knew of English from school and from reading books in English. His favorite writer was Thomas Hardy. His favorite book, Far from the Madding Crowd. So out there is no man land. We talked of Bathsheba and Gabrielloch and Sergeant Troy and Dorset. He had a wife and one son born just 6 months ago. The German officer came to me, introduced himself as Hans Wolf, and he was from Dusseldorf, also playing cello in the orchestra. Then McPherson introduced himself that he is a school teacher from Dorset in the west of England. And Hans, you know, Connie, talked about Dorset, that he had never been to England, still he had read from the books in school and remembered everything. He had a wife and one son born just 6 months ago. As I looked about me, there were a huddle of khaki and grey everywhere, all over no man's land. Smoking, laughing, talking, drinking, eating. Hans Wolf and I shared what was left of your wonderful Christmas cake, Connie. He thought the marzipan was the best he had ever tasted. I agreed. We agreed about everything, and he was my enemy. There never was a Christmas party like this, Connie. Hans told that he had a wife and a 6-month child. All we saw that soldiers from both the sides were smoking, laughing, talking, eating, and said that he liked the marzipan on Jim's bread. Jim wrote in the letter to Connie that he had never imagined a Christmas party like this. Then someone I don't know who brought out a football. Greatcoats were dumped into piles to make goalposts, and the next thing we knew, it was Tommy against Fritz, out in the middle of no man's land. Wolf and I looked on and cheered, clapping our hands and stamping our feet to keep out the cold as much as anything. There was a moment when I noticed our breath mingling in the air between us. He saw it too and smiled. Jim McPherson, he said after a while, I think this is how we should resolve this war. A football match. No one dies in the football match. No children are orphaned. No wives become widows. And there in between, someone brought football and started making goalposts. Jim McPherson and Hans Wolf started cheering, clapping, and stamping feet to cheer their soldiers. Hans Wolf said to Jim that like this we should better resolve our dispute by playing football, because no one dies in a match, whereas war leaves behind orphans and widows. I had preferred cricket, I told him. Then we Tommies could be sure of winning probably. We laughed at that, and together we watched the game. Sad to say, Connie, Fritz won 2-1, but as Hans Wolf generously said, our goal was wider than that. The time came, and all too soon, when the game was finished. The schnapps and rum and the sausages had long since run out, and we knew it was all over. I wished Hans well and told him I hoped he would see his family again soon, that the fighting would end and we could all go home. I think that is what every soldier wants on both sides. Hans Wolf said, Take care, Jim McPherson. I shall never forget this moment, nor you. He saluted and walked away from me slowly, unwillingly. I felt He turned to wave just once and then became one of the 100 of great-coated men drifting back towards their trenches. In this match, Fritz won 2-1. The game was finished, and all enjoyed schnapps, rum, sausage, and was over. And Jim and Hans that they would meet each other with their family again very soon after the fighting will over, and they will go back home. Every soldier from both the sides were wishing the same thing. They all waved once, started moving to their trenches. That night, back in our dugouts, we heard them singing a carol. Here dugout means shelter. And singing it quite beautiful. It was still a knocked, silent night. Our boys gave them a rousing chorus of While Shepherd Watched. We exchanged carols for a while, and then we all felt silent. We had our time of peace and goodwill, a time I will treasure as long as I live. For some time, they started exchanging their carols, and after some time, everyone was in silence and peace. Macpherson's thinking was that till he lives, all this moment will be stored with him. Dearest Connie, by Christmas time next year, this war will be nothing but a distinct and terrible memory. I know from all that happens today how much both armies long for peace. We shall be together again soon. I am sure of it. Your loving Jim. Then he finished his letter, assuring Connie that this war will be far off, and he will again soon with her next Christmas Eve. Here we come to end of part 2. The difficult words and phrases are highlighted, of which meanings is given here. Please refer these words and make sentences to enhance your vocabulary. Now we go to part 3. I folded the letter again and slipped it carefully back into its envelope. I kept awake all night. By morning, I knew what I have to do. I drove into Bridport, just a few miles away. I asked the boy walking his dog where Copper Beaches was. House number 12 turned out to be nothing but a burnt out shell. The roof gaping, the window boarded up. What the author did, he folded the letter and he kept carefully in the envelope. He did not sleep for whole night thinking about Connie. Next day in the morning he started for Bridport, which wasn't that far to reach. Then he asked to a boy who was walking with his dog at Copper Beach and what he saw when he reached to Connie's house. It turned nothing but it has destroyed by fire. There was gaps in the roof and the window were covered with board. I knocked at the house next door and asked if anyone knew the whereabouts of Mrs. Macpherson. Oh yes, said the old man in his sleeper. He knew her well. A lovely old lady, he told me, a bit muddle-headed, but at her age she was entitled to be, wasn't she? 101 year old. She had been in the house when it caught fire. No one really knew how the fire had started, but it could have been candles. She used candles rather than electricity because she always thought electricity was too expensive. The firemen had got her out just in time. She was in a nursing home now, he told me. Burlington House on the Dorchester Road on the other side of the town. Arthur knocked at the neighbor house and asked about Connie. An old man told him that Connie was 101-year-old lady, little bit confused. When fire took place, she was inside her house. She was staying alone. No one knew how the fire took place, but it could be because of the candles she was using instead of electricity. She always thought that electricity is too expensive, and the old man told author that she was in the nursing home at Burlington House on the Dorchester Road on the other side of the town. I found Burlington House nursing home easily enough. There was paper chains up in the hallway and a lighted Christmas tree stood in the corner with a lopsided angel on top. I said I was a friend come to visit Mrs. Macpherson to bring her a Christmas present. I could see through into the dining room where everyone was wearing a paper hat and singing. The matron had a hat on too and seemed happy enough to see me. She even offered me a mince pie. She walked me along the corridor. Mrs. Macpherson is not in with the others, she told me. She rather confused today, so we thought it is best if she had a good rest. She has no family, no one visits, so I'm sure she will be only too pleased to see you. She took me into a conservatory with wicker chair and potted plants all around and left me. A conservatory means a place in hospital where patients who need special care are kept. He reached at Burlington House nursing home, and what he saw there, the hall of the nursing home was lighted and a Christmas tree was in the corner of the hall. He saw everyone was wearing paper hat and were singing. I met the matron who was also in the paper hat and enjoying that. He told her that he was the friend of Mrs. Macpherson and come to visit her and brought gift for her. She offered him mince pie. While walking in the corridor, she told him about the Connie was not well and so she was taking rest. Also, there is no one in his family and no one come to visit her. She will be happy to see author. When the author entered her restroom, she saw an old lady was sitting in a wheelchair. She had silver white hairpin into a whiskey band. She was gazing out at the garden. "Hello," I said. She turned and looked at me vacantly. Vacantly means with blank. "Happy Christmas, Connie," I went on. "I found this. I think it is yours." As I was speaking, her eyes never left my face. I opened the tin box and gave it to her. That was the moment her eyes lit up. Means she was very excited with recognition and her face became suffused with a sudden glow of happiness. I explained about the desk, about how I found it, but I don't think she was listening. When I said hello, she turned and looked at me blankly. She was very blank looking at the author. The author wished her Happy Christmas and he went near her and gave her the tin box, and after that he opened the tin box. She was excited and happy. The author started explaining that about the desk and how he got the tin box, but he thought that she was not listening to what he was talking. For a while, she said nothing but stroked the letter tenderly with her fingerprint. Suddenly, she reached out and took my hand. Her eyes were filled with tears. "You told me you had come home by Christmas, dearest," she said, "and here you are, the best Christmas present in the world. Come closer, Jim dear, sit down." I sat down beside her. and she kissed my cheek. I read your letters so often, Jim, every day. I wanted to hear your voice in my head. It always made me feel you were with me. And now you are. Now you are back. You can read it to me yourself. Would you do that for me, Jim dear? I just want to hear your voice again. I had loved that so much. And then perhaps we will have some tea. I have made you a Christmas cake, marzipan all around. I know how much you love marzipan. She said nothing but touched the letter gently and softly with her fingertips. Suddenly, what did she do? She mistook the author for Jim, who had come home, as promised on Christmas. She kissed the author on his cheek and asked him to read the letter to her. She wanted to listen to the voice of her husband. She said that he himself means Jim himself was the best Christmas present to her, and she will make Christmas cake marzipan for Jim because she knows that Jim loved the cake very much. Thank you. Here comes to an end of part